I started playing the piano when I was in 3rd grade. I took classical lessons for 4 years about with Barbara Larson, who was the teacher at the Woodside Elementary and then later at the middle school. And then when I was in 8th grade, I'd always heard a lot of jazz as a kid. My parents played a lot of jazz music. My dad loves jazz. He's got tons of CDs and records too, old records. And so I'd always been hearing it, and I'd heard the school jazz bands, and I'd always said, oh, I want to play clarinet in the jazz band someday, play clarinet in the band. But when I was in 8th grade, I went to one of the Bowdoin College jazz nights, and I heard this guy playing the piano, and it was really cool. All the chords he was playing were much more complicated, and they had a lot more depth than the stuff I'd been playing out of the easy piano book. And so I talked to him, and we set up a lesson. Hassan Muhammad is his name. He was a freshman at Bowdoin at the time, and we had my first lesson. We played CJM Blues, and it was really cool. I loved it. And then he recommended me to his teacher, Matt Fogg, and that's who I take lessons from now. I've been taking jazz lessons ever since, playing around, and it's pretty neat. The Quarter Dozen is the name of the trio, and it was Sam Hansen on drums and Conor McGrory on bass. They're both from Falmouth, and that was really cool. It was not like any other group I'd ever been in. We had like a new level of focus, I guess, was the coolest thing, because a lot of kid groups, especially in middle school and early high school, you know, there's not a lot of focus, and usually some adult who, you know, keeps everything running and all that. And it wasn't. I mean, the three of us were just totally like on the same page and into it, and we had some cool stuff. It was a student-led group. We had a really cool arrangement of Greensleeves, old English folk song. The coolest things about jazz is that it's so creative and improvisational in the moment. You know, with a lot of classical music, the composer is the creative work behind the music, you know, and the players, there's some interpretation, but for the most part, I'd say, the goal is to play it as it was written by the composer. But in jazz, a ton of people play different versions of the songs, and they sound totally different. And it's all sort of about the musicians and how can you arrange a song so that it's unique, so that it's different, so it sounds really cool. And that's a really cool part, because it puts more of an emphasis on the players just as much as the people writing the songs. So. And then there's improv too, which is pretty cool. Not unique to jazz, but it's definitely a focus in jazz, maybe more so than some other genres that use improv. And it's great. Usually jazz song, you play the head, the melody, then they go around and everybody takes a solo, and that's really fun too, because you can, if you get going, you can be playing sort of. Actually, my senior paper I wrote about improvisation, so I kind of looked at it from a psychological aspect, which is neat. But when you're improvising, you can play two things. You can play formula, which is some little melodic idea like a riff or something you practiced before, or you have like true improvisation, and that's where you're so into this like trance state that you play something, and then a second later you say, "What was that? It was awesome. It was totally cool," and then you can't remember it, and that's kind of cool. I mean, that's the cool part, It's like anything could happen, and it makes performing really fun, just as much as learning new music, and it kind of always keeps it fresh.